What's up, everybody? Let's get some energy. Everyone's well fed now? Ready to go? This is a great honor of a long time coming. Brandon and I go way back now.
Way back.
And I think, I, like all of you, I've attended a lot of sessions and learned a lot of things. And I think it's wild that in a half hour, 10 minutes, whatever it is, you can download from people 10, 20, 30, 40 years of experience. And the question then becomes like, okay, well, where do we go from here? Like, we're all going to leave with our heads, like, information just, like, spilling out, and plans and strategies and all that kind of thing. And really the difference between, like, a regular performer and a high performer, although you can validate this or not, is that implementation. So I'm curious, B, for you, when was the first moment that you really met a piece of knowledge that you recognized the importance of its implementation? Does that make sense?
It does. And great question, and such an honor to be here with you. And thank you to each and every one of you for being here as well. Without you, there is no me. And so thank you for being here and leaning into this beautiful, beautiful weekend. So when I was in third grade, on the streets of East Las Vegas, I had a PE teacher named Miss Bennett. And one day she took me out to the field, and she said, I want to teach you about this space called the burn. And I said, what is the burn? And she said, if you run far enough and fast enough, you'll begin to feel this cramp in your stomach. She said, that's the burn. And I want to tell you a secret. If you can push through the burn, there's something magical on the other side of it. She said there's secrets on the other side of it. So unlike most kids who were playing on the playground, I was out there trying to run my fastest and meet this metaphorical burn. What that ended up becoming was one of my ways of coping with growing up in institutionalized poverty on the east side of Las Vegas. My mother had mental illness. My father was absent. I lived in gang-infested neighborhoods. We were on welfare, and we were on Section 8. And what I would do in between my bouts of depression and anxiety is I would go out and I would meet this burn again and again and again. And what I realized on my journey is that on the other side of the burn, there was a magical doorway. And this is what I have based my entire career off of, is continuing to show up, chop wood, carry water, and meet that burn. The burn of relationship, the burn of becoming, the burn of shedding old identities. And again, I'm proven, thank you, Miss Bennett, that there is magic on the other side of the burn. And so a lot of my work is threshold work, pushing people to their metaphorical thresholds and staying there long enough to see what is on the other side of it. And I think that that is what is so special about experiences like that. Done right, you meet the threshold, and then you have an opportunity to either go back or lean into that threshold and allow it to transform you into something that you may have never touched before.
Thanks, Miss Bennett. That's like tremendous advice. I don't know I would have been able to metabolize it at grade 3. Like to take that and apply it to what you were pursuing unconsciously, consciously. Because I know a lot of the story of your life, and I'm curious when your life went from existing or surviving that burn to actually implementing it as a way of getting out of East Las Vegas, of like the path was being revealed to you.
Yeah, so when I was 16 years old, my mother had a mental breakdown, and rest in power, Mom. She passed away in 2022. Always one of my greatest teachers, but she ended up losing custody of me. And so during those times, I lived on the streets, and from 16 to 18, I was caught up in gang life. I was caught up into drugs. I was caught up in alcohol. And there was a moment. I was sitting on the east side of Las Vegas in front of this old hotel named Sam's Town. And I looked to my left, and there was this guy that looked just like me, but had like no life in his eyes. And something inside me, call it God, Allah, Daimon, whatever you want to call it, said that if you didn't change, that was going to become you. And that day, I decided that I was going to do whatever it took to make it out. And I had no idea what that path was going to look like. I just knew that sitting next to me was my eventual future if I didn't shift some things. One of the quotes that I live by, Andrew Bennett, he says, the longest journey that you'll ever go on is the 18 inches from the head to the heart. Little did I know that that day, taking one step forward on that bus stop towards re-educating myself, towards getting my GED, towards spending 4 years at a community college because I was too remedial to write in proper English and mathematics. I still speak with Ebonics, and I've learned to love that in so many ways. To going to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, to eventually going to the Ivy Leagues and being told I was stupid by the deans there. That journey was truly a journey that needed my full absorption for it to change and transform me to who I was supposed to become. I often say that sometimes it takes 10 years of nothing changing for you to get to that 1 year where everything changes. For me, it took 12 years of nobody knowing who I was, 12 years of doing my best to heal my traumas, 12 years of continuously saying yes to myself, to eventually getting to that 1 year where I got to even. I wasn't even at the heights of the heights. I was at baseline. And it started with that one decision at the bus stop. Oftentimes, especially in a world of speed, everybody wants to get to that next level. Insta-quick, insta-fast. How do I get in shape in 75 days? How do I take my business to another level in 30 days or something like that? We've lost the art of the process in so many ways. Once upon a time, you had to become an apprentice. And in that apprenticeship phase, you became more and more in tune with your arts. And then you became a journeyman, and eventually you became a master. And in a day and age where, you can type in ChatGPT, hey, how do I become a black belt? People are really losing sight of the process. And so one of the key aspects of my journey was committing to a process long enough for it to transform me into who I needed to become. But more importantly than that, committing to a process long enough where my teachings were not just theoretical, they were embodied. So arriving at 30 years old was when I arrived at baseline, and then the last 10 plus years, I've been focusing on cultivating and sharpening those tools even more and more. And it's just oftentimes a trip that I now am able to sit in front of so many beautiful humans and share the human journey that we are all on.
Yeah, I think a lot about that process of realizing that, I'm sure everyone here has experienced, you've gained knowledge from here this weekend now, and then you have a potential life that's waiting for you if you were to live those things. And my experience of people is that, and myself, I've done this for sure, is we live with the knowing that there's another possibility for us. And I really feel like I made a rule in my life in my early 30s. I should have done it in my teens, but I waited. Just wanted to experience enough rock bottoms, just enough to hurt, enough to change you, But I made a rule that I would always live at my highest level of knowledge. At the moment I learned something, I would implement it, because anything else just created suffering. But I do have to say, some of the pieces of knowledge I had, like the initial one of needing to leave a relationship, meant I had to cause pain to someone else. I remember hearing this quote from Elizabeth Gilbert, where she said, there's no such thing as one-way liberation. If you're free, the other person is too. They just don't know it yet. And so, in terms of that application part, and maybe we could touch on initiation here too, but in terms of application part, what can we do with the friction of a potential that's unrealized instead of feeding an addiction, which of course it's such a doorway to, how do we alchemize it or bring it into our lives?
What comes online for me with that question is the phrase that I live by, which is chop wood, carry water. I'm a martial artist, and what I love about martial arts is that it keeps you true, it keeps you honest. There's no skipping from white belt to black belt. They say that to get to a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, you will probably be choked out at least 1,000 times. That's just a blue belt. We're not talking black belt. And in a day and age where so many people are trying to skip the process is sacred. The process is where the codes are unlocked. The process is where we are taught who we are. The process allows for us to meet failure sacredly again and again and again and again. And in a day and age where we kind of like shun failure, or we don't want to speak about failure, or we're failure adverse, the process actually says failure is success. And in meeting that process again and again and again, it begins to inform the journey. Sometimes we have an idea of what it's supposed to look like. Like, I want to get to this mountaintop. I want to get to this metric. I want to get to this level. What if that was actually limiting? What if the limit to your sky was actually the beginning of your universe? When we commit to the process for the very sake of the process, oftentimes the end result of that process becomes something beyond anything we can imagine. But it's so important to honor the process. And in honoring the process, it opens up the doorways for our blossoming, for our becoming. I've spoken to a lot of you over the last couple days about legacy, about the soil. And my big thing right now, well, the whole entire world is trying to level up. We come to conferences, we speak about leveling up. I'm all about the leveling down. Leveling down into the soil, leveling down into the roots. In alchemy, we call it the negredo, leveling down into not the enlightenment, but the emblackenment, and doing the deep soil work, working with the soil of our own souls, our own potential, our own becoming. That is the process, and that process done right influences the expression of the blossoming, expression of our own blossoming. Oftentimes, it's so easy to work with malnourished soil. We're trying to grow trees to the skies, and we're so fixated on growth, but we're not focusing on the soil. And to me, the soil is the process. I'm sure there's some farmers in here that know about the process of working with the soil. And this is the invitation that I continue to invite people in, is to your own soil, asking yourself, where is my soil malnourished? Where does my soil need water? Where does my soil need some more love? And trusting that if you work with that process, you engage that process long enough, the blossoming that inevitably emanates from that soil will be oftentimes quite different than if you just allow your soil to be dried out.
Yeah, I think that technology, what you're saying about, I mean, I could just go into ChatGPT. It'd be nice if you could do like the Matrix, where you just are like, I'm a black belt, and then you're like, I know Kung Fu. But that obviously is not a real possibility. Although, if you figure it out how, please tell me. But I find I remember hearing this stat that 70% of food from restaurants is now ordered for takeout. So we get our food instantly from our phone. Mm-hmm. We date from our phone. I heard recently the founder of Bumble say that we're going to have our AIs date each other and figure out if we're compatible. I'm like, so we're even taking out all these what we call complications or resistance, but like humans are anything but convenient, right? Like relationships are anything but convenient, unless maybe it's a booty call or something. But come on, that joke is good. Like people are like, I have one of those. So that the invitation back to friction, because I think technology is starting to teach us, especially when we're young, it's just in our lives. But for some of us who know life before, we're almost bypassing these necessary transitionary, like even just boredom. Like standing in line is no longer just standing in line. It's now like the opportunity to see if you missed a comment on Instagram or something. So how do we build our capacity? Because I think it connects for this friction, but it connects to, in my, like hearing you, if the ceiling I thought was my ceiling is actually my floor, how do I even live with the knowing that anything is possible? Like my nervous system has to now be able to hold that that's always been true and I haven't lived it. Do you know what I mean? Like the grief of that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Deep stuff.
Let's go.
Emerson has a quote that goes, there's nothing capricious in nature. The implanting of a desire means that its gratification is in the constitution of the creature that feels it. Each and every one of us has these God winks, these nudges, these whispers that say this way, or say that way, or say this is my truth, this is the path. In a day and age of noise, it can be really hard to hear that. In a day and age of scrolling and algorithm and attention deficit, it can be hard to hear it. And one of the reasons why I'm so grateful and fascinated with indigenous ways of living, shout out to all my master teachers, both in the East, in the yogic traditions, and also in the Amazon jungle, is they work with time differently. Chronos, chronological time, corporate time, kairos, deep time, present time. All the great teachings ask us to pause. All the great teachings ask us to get quiet. All the great teachings ask us to listen to the inner whispers of our heart. And what's really cool about this day and age is although, hermetic laws of polarity, as one extreme amplifies, the other extreme amplifies, although we are in this age of weaponized attention grabbing, we are also in an age where all the ancient tools are accessible. Even 8-9 years ago at Nike, when I started talking about meditation, they looked at me like I was crazy. When I talked about mindfulness, they looked at me like I was crazy. And now everybody and their mama is talking about mindfulness and presence and all of that. So more than ever, the tools are there. It is all about choice. Yesterday in my workout, and thank you for those who came and worked out with me yesterday morning. Woo, yeah. I was speaking about this very choice point about what do you choose? What do you choose on a regular basis? And what are you doing to keep yourself in the present moment? And it really is like a choose your own adventure book. Moment by moment, we have a choice to choose distraction or choose presence, to choose connection or choose disconnection, to choose love or to choose fear, to choose truth or to choose some falsities. And therein lies the power of sovereignty that is living within us in a way that has never lived before. And so to your question, the key is to really begin to pull the tools that resonate most with you to keep you as present as possible. And in being present as possible, the whispers of the heart become alive. And through listening to the whispers of the heart, the direction that you go becomes more aligned with your dharma than some corporatized byproduct. And speaking to a room full of people who are in corporate America, corporate Canada, corporate Earth, this is the day and age to do it different. This is a day and age where you feel the heartbeat of humanity coming online. This is the day and age where love is real. And this is a day and age where everybody, despite our skin colors, despite our backgrounds, despite our shared stories, when we peel back all the layers, and this is the reason why love is my mission, when you peel back all the layers, we all want love. And so the opportunity of the lifetime, again, going back to what I spoke about earlier, the longest journey you may ever go on is the 18 inches from the head to the heart. The opportunity of our lifetime is to get quiet enough to listen to the heart's teachings. Anahata chakra, the great connector of the lower and the higher. And through that wisdom, that becomes a super powerful, potent influencer of our soil and eventually the blossoming of our expression that is in alignment with love.
I was on a Reddit thread recently, which I know that's the start of an odd conversation. There's some rabbit holes down there. But I was wanting to observe people talking about this app where they date AI. Have you guys heard about this? Where people are like in active relationships with AI? And I was wanting to read, this can't be that true. I read some stories about people being sharing with their partners that they're having an affair with an AI. And I'm like, oh man, we're living in a parallel universe. But I wanted to understand what makes someone susceptible to being in love with AI? Or experiencing that? And is it any less love? And of course, my judgment was yeah, it's definitely, it's different. You have to do some hula hoops in your head to figure that one out. But what I wanted to understand was how were they hurt by a human that a relationship with a robot actually made sense? And this coming back even to love, even coming back to just deep connection in a world where love actually requires deep presence. Mm-hmm. And I was sharing just some of the data yesterday in my talk that when a phone is present, people, even with strangers, report feeling less connected, less, the quality of the relationship is lower. And so my question to you is, in this invitation to love and love being the mission, which we have similar missions, how do you see technology as being this? I think of it like a sacred tension, because I met my wife on Instagram, so it'd be hard for me to say, like, don't use Instagram. I'm like, it's a great dating app. But, like, how do we use these tools without, it feels like we could so easily leave this stratosphere and just be immersed in our phones. What do you think?
So it's interesting. Every year I host, for the last 10 years, these rites of passages in the Amazon jungle. From the Amazon to the Andes. Long story short, I met my father when I was 25 years old, and he was living in the Amazon jungle working with the tribes. And part of my reconciliation process with my father was to go down to the jungles, work in the hospitals, and that was a big part of my initiation. And it's interesting, every time I go down there, the first 2 days, I'm so aggravated. I'm scratching because I'm used to being so stimulated. And down there, we have no internet in our lodge at all. First couple of days, I'm so annoyed, I'm irritable, I'm mad, I'm aggravated, and time is just so slowly, boringly passing by. But then after a couple of days, the days begin to stretch. Presence begins to come online. And all of a sudden, the colors become more clear. And you drop into this deep state of kairos, of deep presence. And it reminds me again and again at how much beauty is in the natural order of things. Now, with technology used right, I would say technology is neutral. Technology used right is why I'm able to host these experiences of presence each and every year. Technology used wrong can take us into a completely different paradigm. My social media blew up once I started asking one fundamental question. And the shift was I stopped looking at it as social media, and I started looking at it as service media. With the question of every time I post, is this serving my ego or is this sharing my heart? And it's really funny because there are times where I'll put up a post and I'm like, that's so egocentric. And I'm going to take this down right now because I start to feel the energetics of me wanting to be seen rather than me wanting to serve. When it's in service, and what's cool about that frame of mind when it is in service, sometimes it opens up the doors for me to share uncomfortable things, be vulnerable, be radically authentic. But because it's in service, it hits differently in the nervous system. So this is my dance of like, how do you use technology right? I always say that there's a very thin line between superheroes and supervillains. I'm an X-Men nerd. I'm a Marvel nerd. I've watched it all. There's a very thin line between superheroes and supervillains, and the fundamental differences is one uses their powers to serve the self, the capital I, and the other uses their powers to serve others. And each and every day, I have to ask myself, what side of that line am I standing on? As a company, what side of the line are you standing on? As an individual, what side of that line you are standing on? And so technology, done right, it's game-changing. Wow, what a blessing. Technology used wrong, and we got the nuclear bomb. So it's, again, when we are healthy, whole, vibrant, and heart-centered, how we use technology, how we use fire is different. It's an embodiment of the embodiment, or it's expression of the embodiment. And so I really think that technology used right is everything we see it can be and even more. And used wrong, it is literally, it can lead to utter destruction.
Yeah, if I hear what you're saying in there correctly, is when you pose from a place of trying to get something or create performance versus something that is just asking to move through you, there's a creation of self-esteem. There's a reinforcement of a self. And if we're dancing for algorithms, which is so easy to do, then literally dancing too. But it's like if we're doing that, then we're now, as Michael Gervais said too, like we're outsourcing self-worth. And that's such important work to feel like even the abandonment in your own creativity, the abandonment, like even an ad campaign that doesn't necessarily feel authentic, or a title on a post that you can feel is trying to hook into psychology, which, of course, that's important. Marketing's important. I always say that authenticity is not free of strategy. Like strategy is still important. So when we're thinking about that journey to mastery and that journey to self-esteem, how does taking how do we build that type of self? Like the type of self that, like historically, when you were at the bus stop, did you think about working for Nike? Like how did you build that self? Does that make sense?
Going back to what I've mentioned a couple times here, and if you follow me, you know I'm all about chopping wood and carrying water. Every day, chop wood, carry water. Today is actually day 996 days straight that I started training. Why did I do that? Because I arrived at 38. My mom just died. My dad died. My best friend went to jail for murder. I'm 30 pounds overweight. I see myself getting completely tossed and lost in the matrix, and I decided it was time for a full stop. I needed to get my focus right. So almost 1,000 days straight of training every day, no misses, no glory. Oftentimes nobody's saying good job, but it's in the process of becoming, in the process of showing up each and every day, the process of continuing to show up for your thing and working the soil where you build the energy, one builds the energy needed to fuel the Dharma. And for my yogis in here, you'll know what I'm talking about when I speak of Dharma. But Dharma from a yogic sense is like your divine why, your divine path. And one of my master teachers, shout out to Daniela Garza Rios, she would say, protect the Dharma and the Dharma will protect you. Protect your purpose and the purpose will protect you. Protect the why and the why will protect you. Part of protecting the Dharma is showing up every day for the Dharma. And although some days may be messy and some days may be slow and some days may be absolutely abysmal, over time, things compound, energy compounds, and things begin to shift. So when you get a young black man in America with no education from the east side of Las Vegas who's statistically supposed to not become anything, to becoming the first trainer in the history of Las Vegas to be signed to Nike, not as an athlete, but as a trainer, how does one go from that to that? And all I can say is for 10 years, I chopped wood and carried water for the sake of honoring the Dharma. And the Dharma for me was rooted in, as I mentioned earlier, I love X-Men, it was rooted in human performance. How do I understand everything I can about human performance and how do I embody it by making myself the guinea pig? One of my master teachers that I met as I was working as a spa attendant at the Wynn Hotel, taking care of rich naked guys each and every day, handing them pineapple juices in the sauna, this incredible teacher named Jamel Davenport came in, and I was just like, I was enthralled at how embodied this guy was. And I said, how do I become you? And he said, you need to embody two things. He said, first, you need to lead by example. You need to walk your walk. And the second thing he said is you can never be afraid to help somebody become better than you. And he said, if you can embody those two things, you'll be all right. Again, that was a long time ago, and it took a long time from that point to getting to a point where Nike eventually saw me. But because I was chopping wood, carrying water each and every day, eventually somebody from Nike was in Las Vegas. They heard about this trainer that was doing these zany, innovative things with sports psychology and sports performance, but more importantly than that, rooting it in the heart. And Nike called. And from there, it opened up a 12-year relationship where I was able to dive deep with one of the biggest brands on the planet. And that would have only came from me committing to the process. And this is what I just want to reemphasize again, like, there's no glory oftentimes spoken about committing to the mundane, committing to the boring, committing to the chopping wood, carrying water each and every day. But the Dharma knows And each and every one of us knows if we are all in on our thing, or we're kind of skirting around the outskirts of the thing. As a performance coach, I can get athletes, I can get my clients that I work with to the threshold, to the burn that Ms. Bennett taught me about in 3rd grade. But it's always the individual that gets themselves onto the other side of that. And that is the beauty of honesty. The second limb of the yamas, satya. We speak about the first limb, ahimsa, the heart. Satya is the second limb of the yamas in yoga. Truthfully walking towards your dharma, being honest with yourself about where you're at, each and every day planting seeds, knowing that over time those seeds will bear fruit if you continue to nourish the soil, is how I've seen multiple times again and again people grow trees of their own embodiment and their own highest expression that oftentimes blows their mind in ways that they can never imagine. But more important than that, also bears fruits for the community to also partake in. Me and Mark were earlier talking about one of our shared teachers, Francis Weller, who has spent like 30 plus years focusing on the lost art of initiation. And once upon a time, they said that the individual was actually composed of 5 parts. We had the individual, we had the family system, we had the community, we had our clan, and we had our connection to ancestry. And what's happened in this day and age is we've lost connection to ancestry in a lot of ways. We've lost connection to the clan, or like that thing that gives us that family dynamic, that location that gives us meaning, like this is where I'm from. Community is fractured at best. It's a catchphrase that everybody throws around, but community is oftentimes pretty hollow, and family systems are pretty jeopardized in a lot of ways. So what we have is individuals with capital I running around trying to initiate themselves for the sake of them being initiated. Once upon a time, initiation was never about I. It was about the community. And what was beautiful is because it was about the community was invested in the individual. And there was a symbiotic relationship when it came to cultivating the gifts of that person, of that individual, so that they could be more purposeful for the community. The more powerful the community, the more powerful the individual. And so again, purpose done right, purpose done in heart, purpose done in love, purpose done in intention, the Dharma done right, always, always, always benefits more than just the I, more than just you. And that is the ancillary prize that comes online when we start to listen to the whispers of our heart and we start to do the work, is that you are planting seeds under trees who will bear fruit for your community, or under trees where you may never see the shade that you sit under, but inevitably it gifts something far beyond you, gives you something to the world far beyond you, into generations. And that's the beauty of this work, of working and doing the deep work, rooting it in truth, and chopping wood, carrying water.
Yeah, I remember when I was in a deep moment of like, who am I? What do I want to do? And Brandon was like, chop wood, carry water. I was like, yeah, fuck, I know. You say that all the time. It's like, chop wood, carry water. And it's so simple, yet it is like, show up every day, do the best you can, but actually do the best you can.
Do the best.
You know, and in talking about I think the commitment to the highest version of yourself is actually a commitment to love, right? Like, if I'm not the best version of me, then I'm dishonoring the relationship I have with my wife or my son, for example. And I think of leveraging that level of responsibility to the people we love, because we don't change for many things, right? Like, to actually get someone to change is pretty hard. They have to find something within themselves, and usually love is the thing that they'll actually change for, whether they're going through a breakup or they're feeling a trigger that keeps coming, they're exhausted with a pattern. The theme of this year's gathering is about, creating that future together, like winning the future together. So we've talked a lot about self-mastery. How do we as a community hold each other accountable, and how do we use community or leverage community to actually create that?
Great question. Again, a healthy individual opens up the doors to engaging with community healthily, and a healthy community reinforces the individual. The invitation of our times is to do the work. And, I've been to a lot of conferences, and oftentimes a byproduct is you get really, really hyped. You're ready to go. You're ready to go change the world. And then you wake up the next day and your kids are crying and bills are coming in and emails are pinging and you're like, what just happened? Setting yourself up to live from a space of devotion over discipline and determination and dedication changes the game. The word devotion, to devote, to devote yourself to the blossoming, to devote yourself to the deep work, devote yourself to becoming a better individual, to devote yourself to integrating the work, to devote yourself to having the hard conversations, to devote yourself to looking your boss or your company in the eyes and saying, this is where we need to go, to devote yourself to shed an old identity that maybe you've become known for, but something else is calling you towards something different. To devote yourself in these ways changes the game. I wish I could come on here and say, hey, this is the pathway to the top of the mountaintop, but that would be a disservice to each and every one of you. The only gift that I can give to you all is to offer you the invitation to stand in the soil of your own becoming and do the work. Because the truth is, you all are the guru. Anybody who wants to tell you that you're not the guru, anybody who wants to place your salvation into anything outside of yourself, run the other way. All the teachings point you back to yourself. And one of the most powerful things I've learned from Mark Groves is the most powerful relationship is yourself. Making that beautiful, making that deep, making that soulful, making that intimate, making that radiant, that changes the game. And when you begin to vibrate higher, you naturally attract those who also vibrate higher. When you stand in integrity, that becomes one of the most powerful filters to filter out anybody who is not moving in integrity and begins to attract people that are moving in integrity. When a person is committed to their thing and people know that they're committed to that thing, you attract people who are also committed to that thing. When one becomes more vulnerable and says, this is my heart, this is my grief, this is my pain, this is my shame, these are my shadows, you also open up the doors for other people who are in that space. And so more than anything, this is a day and age of imperfection. One of the most powerful mantras that came to me during an ayahuasca ceremony in the Amazon jungle was, I am so imperfect, it is beautiful. I am so imperfect, it is beautiful. This is the day and age to own those imperfections, because those imperfections become the doorways to connection, and it's those imperfections that become the fuel for your dharmic expression. Art, it's beautiful, and it's subjective. And you go to an artist gallery, you go to the Louvre, and some people are like, that thing is amazing. And other people are like, that thing is horrible. Everyone here is art. Every one of you is a piece of art. You're not for everybody, you're for the right ones. And part of the journey is to allow yourself to be artistically, beautifully you, and trusting that in doing that, it's going to open up all the doors needed to open again and again and again.
So almost 2 years ago, I went to the jungles with Brandon and I think eight other people. And I went on the ayahuasca journey. And on the second ceremony, first off, it's very interesting being in a room where everyone is experiencing moments of needing the bathroom or to puke and trying to be in your own experience. But I remember saying to the question I was living in the ceremony was, what is next for me? Show me my path. And I remember the message I got back in that journey was, why would we show you more when you don't even listen to what we've told you? And I remember being like, oh, shit, that's good. Like, you got me, you know? I thought I'd go in there and I had some revelation. And that was the revelation, was this idea of that when you don't live a truth you know, you trade a truth you need. Like when you haven't implemented the thing that you get here. Because there'll be one thing especially that you're like, I got to go all in on that. And when you don't get more information, because it's essentially saying, I don't trust. I want more. I want a message from God, and then you get one, and you're like, not that message. I'd like a different one. Could I get a different God? How to switch? And so I'm curious, in light of the question that I asked Mother Aya, what is next for you?
So I'm in Bali, and shout out to my beautiful girlfriend right here, Shu. And I'm in Bali, and I am just like, okay, what's next? And I look over my bed, and it's kind of like messy. And I just have this vision of kids waking me up at 3 in the morning and being absolutely annoyed. And so for me, the biggest calling right now is fatherhood. And yeah. Again, in alignment with this whole thing of like leveling up to level down, one of the things that's been interesting is I've had the opportunity to speak to so many people here about what legacy means to you. I just wanted to ask this question, like, what does legacy mean to you? And not one person said money. Not one person said, you know, something like, I want to take my company to the highest level of the highest level. Every person that I spoke to talked about meaning, talked about family. One person said she wants to be known for like her amazing cooking, food. But nobody was talking about like anything that had to do with like oftentimes the goals of corporations and things like that. Everybody spoke about meaning and something deeper. And so as of late, I've realized that like the legacy that we can truly live and lead is a legacy of love. Game theory, right? Finite game, fixed rules, fixed winners, fixed losers. This is oftentimes what we see in the corporate space and in the world right now. Infinite games, infinite winners, infinite losers, infinite potential. To me, love is when you're playing that infinite game. And so for me, the biggest legacy that I could leave is fatherhood. I'm not trying to be immortalized. I'm not trying to have my name etched in stars. I'm trying to just plant enough seeds to make one person's life a little bit better and to share my love in a way that, yeah, makes this world a little bit better. And that is enough. And what's really cool is that all of us here have the opportunity to do that, but we actually have the opportunity to do more than just one person. If it was just one person, it would be enough. But so many of us have the opportunity to touch so many people. And part of being able to touch people is doing that deep work in our own selves and remembering the love that we are.
Amen. Thanks so much, Branden. Everybody go follow Branden. Thanks, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate you for trading time to be able to hear B and I chat. And, yeah, thanks so much, everyone. Love is the mission.
Thank you, everyone. Peace.